Yeah.
How long will this form stay up?
I need it like tonight, so I can order them tomorrow if I can remember. So you need to decide quickly. All right, back to things mechanics should know, understand. Let's see. A boiling battery. A boiling battery will vent acid as well. Will vent acid. Vent acid. That's not a good thing. When this gets into the aircraft, let's see, it causes corrosion. It will cause corrosion.
Is there a reason the gas coming out of the battery is hydrogen and not just water vapor?
Yes, it was the chemical process we went through where they mixed and created the two things, created hydrogen. So not only does you get this acid on, I've been talking about the airframe structure, but almost always running very close to batteries are control cables. Just seems to be the way that works, unless it's forward of the firewall. If it's behind the firewall, there's always control cables. And if you don't care much about your fuselage getting corrosion, you might really want to care about your control cable corroding, because that leads to really bad things. Lead sulfate is bad. Never leave a battery in a discharge state. I think we already wrote that. And I don't think you need me to write it again. And oops, that'll be IV. One before five. Water has a higher freezing point. Has a higher freezing point. Will freeze. Will freeze first. There, just to be clear, will freeze first. As the temperature starts going, first water freezes, then electrolyte freezes. So freezing point, then sulfuric acid. So a discharged battery will freeze over. Freeze easier. I don't know how you want to put it. Will freeze in cold weather. You get the idea, I hope. So if you have a fully charged battery, the chances of it freezing are not as good as it would be if the battery is discharged. Trying to decide when I should tell you some of these things. I'll do it now. So, all right, so you get lead sulfate on a battery. There are ways to get rid of it. 3 ways that I can think of. One, they make little, we have one over in the lab, I'll show you. This is a little circuit board about yay big, and it's a lead desulfonator. And supposedly what it does is you connect this thing in series with a charger, and it pulses voltage. You can't really pick it up with a voltmeter because it's happening pretty fast. But in theory, these voltage pulses will knock the lead sulfate off the plates and recondition the battery. So where does the lead sulfate go? To the bottom in that little space down below. So there's way number 1. Way number 2 is what I talked about in the paint room, where the guy just hooks up the charger and just cranks the bejesus out of it until this thing is, you can literally see the water vapors and acid kind of piling about that high above the batteries with a wet spot around it. What the hell are you doing? Just knocking off the lead sulfate. Well, when you overheat a battery and you get it that hot, you can warp the plates. When you warp the plates, they're going to short out. And once they short out, you're not going to fix that, I guess, unless you go inside and straighten it back out. Let me know if you're going to do that. I want to watch. The third way is to drop it. So you drop it and it lays nice and square. in theory, it knocks the sulfate off the plates. So we had one battery in the shop, and students brought it in and they go, yeah, well, it's dead. And we tried to, and the whole corner was bashed in. So I was like, what did you do? And it started to leak. We dropped it. Well, you can't drop it like this. You got to drop it square. So, but none of those procedures are mentioned in the instructions for continued airworthiness. So
So we took it down at Home Depot with the paint shaker.
that might work, yeah. Now you're thinking. now I know 4 ways. Yeah, I've heard of people taking the battery out to the curb, down to the gutter, dumping it upside down, getting all the acid out, and just beating on it and getting the sulfate starts to come out of the little things and picking it. I mean, that's, I guess if you have to, go ahead. But that's, yeah. Well, I wasn't even going to go with the toxic. I was going to go with the, what are you putting at risk? And you want to do that to your car battery? I mean, knock yourself out, I guess. If that's what you got to do, you got to do. But if you're, it just seems like, get on a soapbox here. Don't do that. You're spending an awful lot of your life to get your A&P certificate. Don't throw it away for a cheap customer, ever. And they're out there, and they're going to find you if you're working in general aviation. I suppose in every aspect of it, there's always that level of cheapness where, it's all things. General aviation might be a battery. You get into corporate and it's going to be, a thrust reverser or something or another. It's like, I don't want to buy new thrust reverser shells. It's always something. So just, no thanks. Let's see, maintenance. I think a lot of this is redundant. Maintenance of lead acid batteries. Let's see. Oh, I don't know if we have to write all this. Some of it should be self-evident. Wear safety glasses because you're dealing with acid. Well, if I don't write it, but we didn't write it. Safety equipment. If you're wearing clothes that you like, you may want to wear an apron, rubber gloves, eyeglasses. If you get the stuff spilled on you, it doesn't hurt right away, so it's not that big a deal. Let's see, remove negative side first. Install negative side last. Don't short circuit the battery. Do not service a battery near open flame or sparks. We covered that. Also, how many guys wear rings? Metal rings. Yeah, that's a bad idea. So, I know you can get these guys on Amazon for like $7 for a whole pack of them. So I don't even wear metal rings anymore. I feel uncomfortable. I started this about 2-3 years ago. I'm like, it's good. It started.
Is there a story behind that, or just?
Oh, I've gotten like, even closing a door on the van or something, just caught right here. You just get it caught. I never work with a ring on, ever. Even this one. First thing I just take my ring and I watch off, and I'm working on airplanes.
In the world to pull metal things off of your hands before you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to help yourself real quick.
Obviously, if you were to short something out, this heats up, it'll burn you pretty bad. So don't do that. Don't short circuit a battery. Well, if I have to write that, we got other problems. Do not jump start batteries. Do not jump start aircraft batteries. Well, wait a minute here. My airplane even has a jump start spot right up front. A receptacle for a ground power cart where I can come in and plug in a ground power cart and start my aircraft should my aircraft battery be dead. So why should I not jump start aircraft batteries? Well, you can start with a simple reason. It can damage the battery.
Question.
Yeah.
On your airplane, you say you've got a ground power unit receptacle. Most ground power units put out 28 volts. How does it not fry the battery?
Oh, it would at my avionics.
Okay.
You reconfigure it to 14 volts. So most of them have a switch that allow you to go 12, 14 volts.
Yeah, I haven't seen one because none of the ones I've worked on for that.
It's right on the other side. It's right there. That little spot. So, well, if you're going to plug in a 28 volt ground power cart to a 14 volt, it can damage the airplane too. So, avionics, they're getting a little pricey. What's aren't you putting in the 750? That's what, not installed is between 20 to 30 grand.
I just got the total bill. I'm gonna pick up my airplane tomorrow. There's some other Sal Harmon panel at $67,000.
That's radios. Radios. So, yeah, how would you like to tell your boss you just plugged in the wrong voltage to an aircraft and it's going to be $67,000? Yeah, might as well just go.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oops. All right. So aside from that, which could be an argumentative point, well, I leave my car battery dead all the time and everybody recharges it and it's never hurt my battery. So what is not an argumentative is that by law, this is FAR, aircraft require a 30 to 60 minute battery capacity in flight. That's a law. Oops, I'm out of space. Battery capacity in flight. So if the alternator fails, you should have a minimum of 30 minutes. That's 30 minutes for aircraft certified to 25,000 feet and 60 minutes for aircraft certified over 25,000. So we'll just go 30 to 60 minutes. So your aircraft certification standards are it should be able to operate for 30 minutes with the battery. That is becoming more and more of an issue. For example, his $67,000 radio package, did you went G5s or the 270? So we're talking about, and I know it's a battery backup, we're going all digital instruments. So before, you could have a complete power failure and you would still have all of your instrumentation in front of you would still work with the exception of your turn and bank. Turn and bank is run off electric, but your attitude indicator, airspeed, altimeter, VSI, all of that is still, your basic flight instruments are going to work just fine. But now we're going to all these electronic things where it's not, so we're talking about taking out all these instruments and what is it, 275? What is it called?
Yeah.
The 275. So the Garmin 275, it's a round instrument that has everything. It's got airspeed, altimeter, VSI, turn and bank, attitude. That's a big one. Attitude, all there. I have G5s, which are like the series below that. I like them because they're a little bit bigger and square. And that's all right there. Now, the saving grace is we have a battery built into that specific component that should last you for, I think, the 30 minutes. But if that goes out, I mean, you could have nothing. You're completely and totally black with nothing. And if you're in instrument conditions, you just die. I mean, there's just no other way around it. You simply die. You go into a spiral spin almost immediately. Yeah.
So why don't they require you to keep the set of steam gauges?
You actually do have a set of backups. You know what the backup is? It's not an attitude. We have a backup airspeed.
TG below it and the attitude indicator above. And if the top one goes out, it automatically brings up the second one.
Yeah, but if you look at an aircraft, let me see. What is that? We're getting way off the G1000 aircraft. Let me see. So you can see their complete glass panel, but they still have a set of backup gauges.
Those are the steam gauges.
Yes, but I believe, I'm not sure if you need that one. I think you can take that out. I'm not. I'm keeping mine. I'm not 100% sure on what can go, what can stay.
You have to have it, but it
Oh,
can
I
be
forgot. You're
electric.
sitting right there. What is it?
You have to have it, but it can be electric too. It doesn't have to be.
Oh, there you go. So, but do you still need these three right here?
I think you have to have attitude and airspeed. Yeah, I think you do have to have all three.
Okay.
Where's the turn?
There is no turn coordinator.
That's
when they have you flying partial panel,
The 275, you can, in fact, it's got the whole vacuum system.
Yeah, but if you pull out, that's where I'm getting a little lost. If you pull out the vacuum system, you still have, what is your attitude? Do you then have to put in electric attitude back up, or do you not need one because you have two G5s or 275s?
I think the 275s are certified, but the G5s are not for them.
Yeah, they can fail over.
We'll have a conversation like this one day.
For now, we'll just listen.
I think the screw was better, but
There we go. This is what I wanted right here. Was a certified 172. Hopefully that's a big picture. Glass panel. There we go. And so this is a 172. So they've got, in addition to all of the glass panel as backups, an altimeter, an attitude indicator, and an airspeed indicator. And of course you always have the compass. It's a given. So, all right. We're kind of got off the subject of batteries, but so back to batteries, which probably didn't answer anybody's question. But the fact remains, your aircraft does require 30 to 60 minute battery capacity in flight. So if you jumpstart somebody's aircraft battery, then of course they're going to say, thanks for the jump, I'm out of here, and they take off. Do they have the 30 to 60 minute?
No.
They do not. So that is a violation of FAR 23.1357. So you need 30 minutes.
Pilots who ask to do that, they're assuming they'll get to where they need to get. Without,
Well, of course, they're assuming everything's going to be fine.
yeah,
They're not assuming it's going to go bad.
right.
what happens when you see it?
You're like, well, the alternator works. So if the alternator works, I don't need the battery.
Okay.
But why'd the battery go dead? Maybe your alternator wasn't working when you left and it didn't charge it. And you were running on battery the whole way here. And now you got here and now it's dead. And now I'm going to jump you just enough to get you up in the air.
Over those mountains.
Yeah, halfway to the mountains. But you know what? If a pilot wants to do that, that's, I'm not going to argue with them. Like, yeah, so I'll charge it. Do what you're going to do. All right, service and inspection. All right, I think a lot of redundancy on here. Let's see. Follow manufacturers. Follow the ICAW instructions for continued airworthiness. Instructions for continued airworthiness. That actually, you know, I'm going to tell you as mechanics, that's getting harder and harder to do because there's so many components on the aircraft. And you have to think about the instructions for all the stupid components. And it starts piling up. And so it becomes more and more difficult to make sure you get everything. You know, for example, if you're going to do an annual on an aircraft, you have to do the airworthiness directive search. Well, you don't just go to the FAA website and go, well, I'm just going to look up, you know, it's what people do, Cessna 182. And you're like, well, there we go, Cessna 182. And you walk away and go, I got them all. Well, no, because you got to do Cessna, but it's Cessna. It's also under Textron now, so you got to get all of that. You got an engine that may have been under Avco Lycoming, Teledyne Continental. So you got to look up the ones for the engine, and they, like my point is, they've changed names. You got to look up magnetos; they've changed names. You got to look up the propeller. You got to look up alternators, generators. I mean, it's every little carburetors, every component on there. You got to know what components are out there and which ones have ADs kind of beforehand, and look at all of those. I mean, and it gets down to the nitty gritty. Sometimes you got to look up seat belts, you know, if they've had aftermarket seat belts put in. Then you start going through, okay, what components are on the aircraft that have instructions for continued airworthiness? Sometimes it's really obscure things, like I have gas struts to open my door. There's instructions for continued airworthiness in the gas strut that I installed because I did under an STC. So some of them are, just, well, every year make sure that it's still attached, and it opens and closes. So some of them aren't a big deal, what you're doing automatically. But of course, the battery, like I said, is something that a lot of mechanics really just kind of push aside and don't do it. I think most of the time it's not laziness. I mean, it could be, but it's just comes from you've been doing it for so long, the norms. You know that you get a battery in, you put the acid in, you got to charge it, you got to put it in the airplane, it's no big deal. Or now you get the new sealed batteries, they're already charged up, you just put it in the aircraft, you're supposed to top charge them first, but you put them in, you don't read in there, it's like, instructions continue airworthiness, and you have to do the capacity check and stuff. So, all right, let's see, so follow that. All right, if I haven't mentioned this before, when you go to your mechanic examiner, and I'm telling you right now, this is really going to be a chance for everybody in here, graduate of this program, to show off. It really is. It should be a time for you to show off. Not like, every other test or practical, when you took your driver's license or something, or you're taking a check ride, it's like, oh crap, I hope I do okay. You won't. If you've done this program and you've gotten B's or better, you're showing off when you show up because you're good. And there's a point. So don't worry about that. But when I was an examiner, God, I hated it. When you would ask somebody a question like, you would get a project that would say something like, inspect, service a battery. I think that was one that was quite often. So inspect and service a battery. So, all right, so I would say, okay, so here's all your technical data here. If you need anything, here's the battery. What I need to do is inspect it and service it for return to service. And so the examinee would come up and go, I'm done inspecting. What do you want me to do? Don't ever do that. No matter what. I don't care what it is. Inspect. It's so many inspects. Inspect the exhaust system. Inspect alternator for installation. Inspect this. Always. Be verbal. If you can't be verbal, you're going to have to learn how to be. All right, battery. I'm going to inspect it. Well, I'm going to inspect it for make up shit. All right? I'm going to just think. What are you looking for? I'm looking for dents, discoloration, scratches. I won't, as an examiner, I would never stop and go, what's a scratch about? I would never ask, why do you care about discoloration? You want to look for scratches, dents, discoloration? I don't care. I'm listening for the things that have to be. Definitely dents in the corner, like maybe somebody dropped it trying to break sulfation off. Excessive bulging or any bulging because, just talk it through, all right? So the note that I had here made me think that is to inspect for. And what do you think you would inspect for? Okay, don't say that. Because that just makes today go really long. Yes, what does that mean? Okay. So what are you going to inspect for? Cracked seams is excellent. Cracked seams will lead to leakage. I'm looking for leakage. Cracks is really good because they could crack. These are things you want to look for. I only wrote like two things, like corrosion and leakage. So corrosion around the aircraft, in the battery box, leakage. So if it's in the airplane, you're going to say, I'm definitely going to look for, I want to take it out, I want to look in the battery box, I want to check. Sometimes just saying it is enough that you don't have to do it. Well, I'd like to start by taking the battery out and inspect the battery box for for any corrosion in the battery box. Noted. Very good. You don't have to do that. Then I'm going to make sure that, if you just ask me to inspect the installation, I want to make sure the cables are tight, there's no corrosion around the posts. I want to make sure that the vent caps are at least tight. If not, I'd like to take the vent caps off and I would check the electrolyte level inside. Just basic things. Just start talking. These are all the things I know about a battery, and it'll get you through it. So I'm not going to write all the inspect for because I just said that. But obviously leaks, corrosion. What do we clean it with? Clean spills. With what? Baking soda. baking soda, or regular soda, I would suppose. Don't clean the top of the battery off with baking soda. Never. Why?
Get it inside. You risk getting it inside.
Baking soda neutralizes the acid. If we get it inside, we
Neutralize that.
neutralize the battery. So don't do that. Now, I suppose if you crash in the desert and you get really thirsty, we've learned a couple of things. Number one, discharge the battery. It's nearly water. You can drink it. Don't do that. Okay, you'll die. That will ease your suffering quickly, maybe. I don't know if it increases. And if not, pour baking soda and then drink it, right? Okay, so do not. Let's see, what did I put that? Oh, that's kind of a. What's that?
So eat the little lead crackers and stuff.
Yeah, lead crackers. Do not let baking soda enter battery. Obviously, have to check the electrolyte level. Oh, how much electrolyte goes in there?
About enough.
Oh, you got to fill it up, right? To either, I've seen it written both ways. So 3/8 inch above plates, or to level indicator. Sometimes it'll say to the bottom of the vent cap. So looking in, yeah.
I read it as 1/8 of an inch below the vent caps.
Okay, or that would be the, or to whatever the book says. So the vent caps inside of the battery come down like that. Sometimes they'll even have a little notch in it, and you just have to read the instructions, but to about the bottom of the vent cap. Depends on the brand of the battery and which one it is. So like I said, I've seen 3/8 above plates in books. I've seen to the bottom of the vent cap. I've seen 1/8 inch below the bottom of the vent cap. Good luck trying to do that. You pretty much just put it in until it gets there. And what are we going to fill it with?
30%, 7%.
Only add clean distilled water. Well, what if you did a hydrometer reading and it's not very acidic? It's more like water. Charge it. So only add clean distilled water. Unless the instructions for continued airworthiness have something different, only add
Clean
distilled water. What if the hydrometer reading's low? Only add clean distilled water. You want to hear a funny story? Tell you a funny story. So again, back when I was first started, back in the, don't get me wrong. I really loved where I worked. But when I first started there, it was definitely the good old boys kind of, this is the way we do things. And I was openly chastised many times for that damn book learning shit. There was no respect for that, and there was a very old APIA, and then a guy who never went to school, didn't have his A&P, but he was a super nice guy, and he, very nice to me and showed me the ropes, because no matter how much you know when you start in a shop, there's their way of doing it, the norms, but sometimes the norms aren't always bad. Often they are. Anyway, I'm servicing a battery, and it was low, as they typically are at annual, and so I needed to add some
Distilled water.
clean distilled water. So I asked Danny, I said, Danny, can I have some clean distilled water? He said, absolutely. Went over, because, these are the things that, like I said, you need help with that. I don't know where they keep the damn distilled water. And he brings out this nice little bottle, and it said distilled water on it and clear, and I'm like, sweet. So, I fill up one, fill up two. I'm out of water. Danny needs some more distilled water. It's empty. Well, we'll probably get you some. Takes the cap off, walks over to the faucet, fills it up, puts it down, and then he puts it on the bottom of the shelf. I'm like, well, I still need some, because you gotta wait. It's distilled water. He was not joking. Distilled water. He said, that's what it is. You have to let it set, and that's distilled water. I'm like, it's distilled. I said, it's actually, and I explained that it's, like a process. 'Cause I'm sure he understood, like moonshine. He's like moonshine? Yeah, you got that.
Why don't you just say so?
But he was pissed. Not at me, but he was pissed that when I said, no, this is what you're just, and then he actually got really mad that they let him do that for years and nobody told him the truth. And they always, the people above him were actually, that's when you water, you get out of the faucet. Mind you, this faucet, it was so bad that the procedure was in the morning, the first guy in, you just turn the faucet on and you let it run all day long. We're on a well. And for the first hour or two, it was just brown. It was brown for like it wasn't the pipes, it was the water, and it was just brown. And I refused to drink it. One guy was like, I don't know what's wrong with you. This water's just fine. I think I asked him something about his health issues, and he's like, well, that's stuff from that. Okay.
There's no connection.
No connection. So, all right. So distilled water is distilled, not stilled water. So, true story. All right. So testing. Let's see. I actually have something on here that is not correct. But times change. So you guys are doing that battery internal resistance test, and you have the battery tester, which we're using as a switch. And so it's for cars, and you hook it up to there, and it's got a little meter on it, and then you hit the button, and it's got a load in there. You can smell it. And it gets hot, red hot back there. And so you put a load on the battery with this battery tester, and because it's closed circuit voltage, right? So you put it on, you get open circuit, you hit the button, it gives you closed circuit with a big resistor, and after so many seconds, you read where the needle is, and if it's in the green, it's good. Well, that's for cars. It's not for airplanes. So how do we do airplanes, lead acid batteries? You watch me do it.
You discharge it at a
What's that? So if I'm testing a battery, I'm going to follow the instructions. I'm going to charge the battery. I'm going to put on a measured discharge. So every year you got to do a measured discharge test, which is what I'm doing to my battery. Right? And so did you guys kind of watch what we're doing over there a little bit? So I brought my battery in because, it's annual time. And so Ian helped me, and we looked up in the manual. It says, what is my capacity of the battery? And it's 23 amp hours, which means that it will produce 23 amps for 1 hour. And it wants me to do that. It wants me to put it on a load that is 23 amps and time it and see how long until it gets to 10.1 volts, right? 10.1? It's 1.67, I think, per cell. And so you time it. And you're allowed 80% capacity, which was 43 minutes. So if it reaches 43 minutes before the buzzer goes off, battery's good. If the buzzer goes off and it hasn't been 43 minutes, then battery's bad. And guess what? Yeah, mine didn't pass. So it says if it doesn't pass, then recharge it and try it one more time. So I'm in the recharging it, trying it one more time phase. So we'll probably try it again tomorrow. So, testing, we have the load test per ICAW, instructions for continued airworthiness, which we're supposed to do annually. Now, I will say that along with that, if somebody just brought in an airplane, I kind of suspect there's nothing wrong, I don't think, with using an automotive tester. Like I often say, the FAA will tell you there are specific things you must do to return an item to service. So in other words, my battery is supposed to be removed from service, and it's not supposed to be returned to service until I do a capacitance, this capacitance check on it, okay? But there's nothing that's stopping me from using one of these automotive testers and putting it on and going, nah, I'm throwing the battery out. I can use anything I want to throw it out, but I can't use anything I want to keep it, right? So I can, especially on your own aircraft, nobody will, except for my wife, so why'd you do that? But she never questions anything on the aircraft, which is dangerous. Yeah, I'm going to need a new, she doesn't care. Yeah. Buying a new autopilot. Oh, that's great. It's $20,000. Get a spare. I don't care. So load test for that. But so my point was, if I wanted to use one of those automotive testers, somebody, I suspected the battery may be going bad. I don't want to take it, do a measured discharge, all that. I want to use this real quick, and it shows it's bad. It's bad. Fine, throw it out. You don't have to go through all the extra steps just to prove it's bad if you think it's bad. So we have the load test. There's also the hydrometer test. Especially, well, only in the flooded, not especially, but you can't do it to anything but the flooded battery. The instructions for continued airworthiness may talk about doing a hydrometer test where you're actually going to use a hydrometer. So you guys know what a hydrometer is? So if you ever played with fish in saltwater tanks, that's the first thing you'd buy is a hydrometer. And so a hydrometer is something that, well, like a simple one in my fish tank, because I have saltwater fish, is I have my little saltwater level. There we go. And inside of the fishy tank, I have a hydrometer, and it kind of, well, looks, it's also a thermometer, so it's kind of next down like that. Looks like that, and it floats. It's got little BBs down here and stuff. So it floats at a certain level, and it'll float, and it'll have like a green line right here, and say, well, as long as it's floating between here and here, then your saltwater level is perfectly fine. But if I had too much saltwater is very buoyant, what is this thing going to do? It's going to rise up. And then my water level will be out of the green, and the water level's down here somewhere, and that's, whoa, you got too much salt. Well, as the water evaporates, then it becomes more salty, and it does that. Well, so then I add a bunch of fresh water, and I had too much fresh water. What's the hydrometer going to do? It's going to sink. So in a hydrometer, let's see, it's based on distilled water is going to be 1.000. I'm going to write that down here. Maybe not. Well, it is. So hydrometer test. So the water is the standard water. So water is 1.000. SG, which is specific gravity. And I believe that's distilled water if you want to get technical on it. Let me see. All right, so hydrometer test. I got that point. I'll follow my notes, otherwise I'm going to get lost. So what do we do? One, can only test if water was not just added. That's a terrible thing to say. Don't do it if you just added water. Because if I went up to him and go, ooh, we're pretty low, and there's not enough for me to suck up to do a hydrometer test, I'll fill it full of water, then do a hydrometer test. In theory, the water and the sulfuric acid didn't mix, and so you could just be sucking up the top water. In theory. So I want you to do that.
Yeah, test before you add water.
Yes, and if you don't have enough water because it was so dry, and I popped open many batteries, and I'm like, woo, there are the plates, and I don't see water. You got to add water first. So if water was added, let battery set. So let battery set before testing. Or charge it, mix it up. How long do you let it sit? I don't know, whatever seems appropriate. Measures specific gravity of fluid as compared to water. And like I said, water is 1.0. So sulfuric acid has a higher SG than water. So if you got more sulfuric acid, you have a higher SG, more water, lower SG. So if the battery is fully charged, you have more acid, so you have a higher reading. If it's discharged, you have more water, you have a lower reading. All right. So hydrometer readings. So 1.300 to 1.275 is a high state of charge. .275 to 1.240 is a medium. 1.240 to 1.200 is low. Therefore, anything below 2 would be, I guess, dead. What if it's 1.275 exactly? Is it high or medium?
High.
Okay.
Round
Huh?
up.
Medium high? I don't know. I didn't make up these numbers.
Tap the float and recheck.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we only had one really nice brand new hydrometer with an actual hydrometer in there that gave you an actual SG reading with the thermometer attached to it. And what happened to that? It lasted about 2 minutes. So, but in all fairness, we had another one just like it, and it lasted 2 minutes because they're snap-on, and they made a glass tube out of very, very breakable thin glass with a piece of glass on the inside that floats around and bangs. And I just, so unless you guys did something to it that I'm not aware of. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. That's why I didn't say anything. It's like, I even told them, don't feel bad. The other one just, I think it was crap. It should have made it out of plastic. So mine is in there, and it's lasted me for 30 years now, I think, because it's made out of plastic, but it's a little bit different. Anyway, okay, so hydrometer reading. So reading must be temperature corrected. Must be temp corrected. Must be temperature corrected for the temp of electrolyte, not ambient temp. So in other words, just because it's 100 degrees outside doesn't mean your electrolyte's 100 degrees. Might be 130 because it came out of the engine compartment. Or just because it's 80 out doesn't mean that it's 80. It could be a lot hotter because it came out of the engine. So you want to measure the actual electrolyte temperature and do a correction on that. So let's just leave it there. This is a good place to stop. Otherwise we'll be in the middle of something and it'll be like, oh, it's time to go.